There's a fable about a king of a small country. In fact, it was just an island surrounded by water. One day, the king decided that his country was too small for all his people. So he gathered together his knights and he sent them across the water. When the knights landed on a far shore, they claimed the land for the king. Villages and towns were established in the new land, but the king soon found out that it can be expensive to expand a tiny country in a new place. The king needed more money before his country became bankrupt. But instead of taxing his own people, he decided to make the people of the new land help support his land. After all, the king mused, everyone should be appreciative of the mighty exploits of their mighty leader. The king instituted taxes, tariffs, on things he thought were not necessary so that people would not get too upset. But they did get upset. He raised the cost of sugar, tea, coffee, and wine. These were things considered very important, so they did get upset and even refused shipments of these things by throwing them back into the sea. The king did not get enough money to pay his bills, so he decreed that there should be another tax in the land, but he tried to make it hidden by requiring the purchase of special stamps on all official documents, newspapers, and pamphlets. This made the people of the land even more angry, and they started to resist the king and his right to impose such hardships. The king responded by sending out yet another decree that he was in charge of all things official in the new land, that he would send his knights to keep order, and that the people of the land would pay for the knights. And the people did not live happily ever after. Does anybody know the name of this fable? It's called the American Revolution. Thank you. This country was founded on the resistance of total control by a single authoritarian figure. Had the King of England not treated the people of British America with such heavy-handed cruelty and injustice, it is very likely that this country may have been part of the United Kingdom for a long time. Even during the height of the American Revolution, there were those Americans who desired to remain under the control of the king because it was familiar, it was historic, it gave them a sense of belonging. There are always those who want to be told what to do, who do not want to think about the bigger picture, and who are content to know their place, even if that place is in meaningless service to an uncaring despot. The American Revolution began not with a large military action, but through small acts of resistance throughout the country. Some refused to pay unfair taxes. Others engaged in minor acts of sabotage and subversion against the English troops, while still others wrote dissenting articles and pamphlets with lovely little stamps on them. The English simply did not know how to deal with this sort of less than regal behavior. These were acts of resistance done not by military officers or high court judges or super people or hard-chiseled action heroes. They were acts of ordinary bravery done by ordinary people, and they inspired others to do the same. Civilian acts of nonviolent resistance have resulted in many triumphs for the fight of freedom and justice throughout the world. In 1949, Gandhi's call for acts of nonviolent resistance led to the independence of India from English domination. The harsh Marco dictatorship in the Philippines was brought down by peaceful protesters in 1986. The Polish call for peaceful solidarity, remember Solidarność? Over authoritarian, I'm going to say that word, authoritarian rule succeeded in 1989, and in the very next year, South African apartheid policies were abolished. Other amazing moments of nonviolent resistance resulted in the end of tyrannical rule in Serbia, Ukraine, and many Arabic countries in a time called the Arab Spring. In our own country, nonviolent activism has resulted in gains for the right for women to vote, advances for equal justice in the civil rights movement, and freedoms for the gay and lesbian communities. The point here is that small acts of nonviolent defiance can have an effect on tyrannical control, though they do carry a risk. That is why people who act in groups tend to be more effective. That is why I bring forth this issue here to you. I believe we are heading for a time of authoritarian rule that will result in the suffering of many. Like all prospective dictatorships, the true aims of the leaders are never fully revealed until it is too late to head them off. This is no time to cover our faces and pretend nothing is happening, even if it feels that nothing is happening to you right now. Those who do not feel the pain of suffering from brutal oppression will one day suffer under the tremendous weight of guilt and shame for having been complacent. Granted, I am speaking to you about the recent rise of one particular wing of one particular political party, but this is not, mind you, a sermon on politics. It is a sermon directed against the abuses of basic human rights now being done in this country by a government that shows every sign of heading toward tyranny, the very thing this country fought so hard against and has resisted throughout the world for more than 2 centuries. The people currently in power use tools of totalitarianism that include a heightening of fear, scapegoating, the exploitation of workers, rigged or hampered elections, a biased judicial system, a monopolized media, but worst of all is the abuse, the oppression, and terror that results from these. All of these things are happening now. It is not a political statement to say that all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. It is not a political statement to say that all people should be allowed to live in a world where each is free to embrace life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without restriction or obstruction. It is not a political statement to say that all people deserve fair and equal treatment under the law, period. These are statements of reason. These are statements of decency. These are statements of faith. Was that an amen, Michael? If we are truly going to call ourselves universalists, then we must embrace the worthiness, integrity, and righteousness of every person in this country, whether or not they are born here, or speak their mind, or look or act different than the ruling class. We must begin every deliberation, every principle, and every discourse with the sacred proposition that every human being is no less deserving than any other. Within the span of just 2 months, we have seen a multiplication of efforts to divide, demean, and devalue certain sectors of the American population and to distance our country from many of its long-term allies and supporters. Such efforts have included restrictions of the rights of women to vote and elimination of protections against discrimination to LGBTQ communities, and elimination of funds used to promote health throughout our country as well as others, a privatization of lands that belong to the Native Americans, and the abduction and relocation of students and others without the due process constitutionally guaranteed to everyone in this country, regardless of resident status. The list goes on and on. But it's easy to ignore these things when they are not happening to you. When there is an endless parade of devastating and disastrous news to assault any sense of decency, it's easy to tune it out. When speaking out may spark difficult conversations and provocation, it's easy to be silent. But that is the very thing the tyrants hope to achieve. By confusing the society, bombarding them with sudden changes, frightening them with continuous threats, authoritarians seek to wear down and suppress the population. They hope to force their country into submission because the real power of imperious regimes is not in their movement, but in the acquiescence of the general population. They rule because the people allow them to rule. That sense of safety tyrants hope to instill in their people is a lie. When people are snatched off the street in broad daylight, when people become ill because there are no available medicines or vaccines, when people are fired abruptly and haphazardly, those in power try to convince others that such things will not happen to them. But the reality of a tyrannical regime is that if we allow it to happen to them, then it can happen to us. Resist. Write letters. Join in demonstrations and boycotts. Do not cooperate. Retain a vision of a free America and support institutions like this church, where we can gather and support each other in these efforts. Do it because it's the least we can do. Do it because it's the patriotic thing to do. Do it because it's the righteous thing to do. As for myself, this Thursday and every Thursday that I'm here, I'm going to take my little sign. Thursdays I'm going to start at 3 o'clock, and if we change the time, that's fine, but 3 to 4 or 3 to 5, I'm going to stand out in front of this church, come rain, come shine, and hold up my little sign and hope that it makes some tiny little difference. In Maryland, the first 2 words are your fault, so. In the name of that which you hold in your heart to be the most sacred, may it be so.